Well, hello everyone. Thank you for coming back to this, my latest release from Celebrity Signing. Something a little bit different for you this time around. I've decided rather than do a sort of autograph-related video, I just go a little off-piste here. As some of you probably know from previous videos, part of my other life when I'm not in my normal full-time job is I am a film and TV SA, otherwise known as supporting artist for the layman, probably known as an extra. And so I thought I'd do a video just to show some of the things that I've done over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, well, about 5 years now that I've been an extra or a supporting artist. So yeah, I thought I'd crack on and just kind of give you a brief summary of the stuff I've done. So I hope you enjoy the video. So one of the earliest things that I did, this is a screenshot, and predominantly these are all, well, they are all screenshots, more or less. The first thing I did was this, which is from an episode of Casualty, probably way back in 2012, maybe, 13, something like that. And this is from an MMA fight during an episode of Casualty, and here I am by here, just walking into the MMA arena. Very brief, as most roles as an SA tend to be. You're pretty much just there to kind of fill a bit of background, really, and just to make things look a bit natural and real. So that's me walking into the MMA ring in Casualty. Next thing I did, you can probably spot me here, I would imagine. Here I am just over here. This is from the TV series Stella. I'm sure a few people have seen it, set in the Welsh Valleys, written and starring by Ruth Jones. Absolutely hilarious if you haven't seen it. I was in pretty much every series, barring I think one of Stella, so I was in it fairly regularly. But a few times I was in it where I had a sort of slightly better bit of on-screen time than others. So this was actually at a funeral that turns into a bit of a fight. And that's me that you can see there just over in the top corner. Scrolling down, this is another episode of Casualty. This was very much a sort of another sort of blink and you miss me opportunity. This was me just wandering past a house where some catastrophe has taken place. It's Casualty, of course. Catastrophes have taken place, and that's me by there in the green coat, just strolling past. You'll see this green coat quite regularly because it became my, I guess, my SA coat for quite a period of time. Scrolling on, this was my next Casualty. No green coat this time. You can see me just over here, studying a leaflet. Very studiously studying that leaflet. This was the first time, I think, that I was actually on set in the studio rather than just on location. So this is my first time on set in the studio. Obviously a few years ago now, because I don't think any of these two characters you can see here are actually in it anymore. Scrolling on, again, hopefully you can see me. Ta-da! The coat's back, and you'll notice I'm wearing that same grey hoodie as well. I tend to wear a lot of the same stuff when I'm doing my essay work. I really should have a better wardrobe. This is from the series Trolleyed, which was on Sky One. I think it did about 7 series on Sky One in the end. Did this loads as well. Pretty much doing the same thing most of the time, which was a shopper. I mean, it's set in a supermarket, so yeah, that's me with my shopping basket strolling through the set of Trolleyed. And I think the next one's Trolleyed as well. This is me actually sort of stealing the scene a little bit here. I kind of got in the way of the two main actors while they were doing their scene. And if you watch the DVD, because all of these are on DVD, they actually used a scene that sort of went a bit wrong, and the two actors look at each other and kind of it all goes a bit tits up, really. But yeah, this is a great shot of me just strolling along and literally taking up the scene in my lovely green jacket and grey hoodie. Moving on, this was me in an episode of a TV series called The Indian Doctor. I've never actually watched it myself, but it's set in the 60s, a sort of late 1960s, about an Indian doctor that moves to a small Welsh village. I actually played an on-screen sort of thug. For those who've sort of seen me in pictures and stuff, you know that I've either had a goatee or as I've got now, a sort of beard pretty much all the time, but I actually had to shave it off and have a moustache for this. So that's why you can see my sort of very handsome tash by here and clean shaven chin, which is quite a rarity for me. But that was really cool. It was a one-off thing. Pretty sure it's finished now. It certainly isn't on TV anymore. But that was quite a cool one to do, sort of a bit more of a period drama piece, I guess, if you would. Moving on, this is a scene from a film I did. There's a bit of a theme for me doing films, unfortunately, which is pretty much every single film that I've been an essay in, the scene that I've done has been cut out of the actual film itself. This was for a film called Narcopolis, which is a fairly low budget sort of production. And as you can probably see, there's me sat on the sofa in the corner. Surprise, surprise, I'm wearing the green jacket. But this scene was actually cut out. Disappointingly, it's not even in the deleted scenes on the DVD, so you actually this scene doesn't exist anywhere at all. I thought it might have been at least on the deleted scenes, but it was cut out completely. The only reason I've actually got a screenshot of this is because it was in the original trailer for the film, but then when they cut the scene out, they obviously dropped it from the trailer, so you can't find this scene anywhere at all. Even the original trailer doesn't exist anymore, so this is pretty much the only proof that I've got that I was in this film. Moving on, this is an episode of Casualty. This is probably my first walk-on role, a walk-on in the technical sense, because I was actually wheeled on in a wheelchair. And this is me over to the bottom right-hand corner as Chef with cut off finger. So that bag that the paramedic is handing to the doctor has actually got my severed finger in it. The story being that I cut my finger off with a meat cleaver. And so I'm wheeled in, a bit of a conversation happens, hand over my finger in a bag of ice, and wheel me off into Casualty to do whatever it is they're going to do, sew my finger back on. So that was really cool. It was about 4 hours on set, but got paid really well for it, and it was a really, really good job to do. So yeah, that was probably one of my first roles that wasn't just a, background essay type of role. Moving on, and this is actually another film. This is a film called How I Live Now, which again is out on DVD at the moment, starring Saoirse Ronan, who's obviously a big Hollywood star. That's her with the blonde hair there. It's not the best picture of her because she was moving at the time, so it's a little blurry, the pause I did. Obviously there's me looking like a statue in the corner. And surprise, surprise, this is a film I did, and this scene is cut from the film. So this scene doesn't exist in the film. But if you have the DVD for How I Live Now, I don't know if anybody does, but if you do, I am in the deleted scenes, and you will see this scene with me in it in the deleted scenes. So yeah, you will get to see that if you watch it. So that's How I Live Now. Right, moving on. This is a bit of a vague one here. Okay, so this is a scene called One Chance. I think that's the name of the film, starring James Corden. This is James Corden here. I think he plays Paul Potts, who was he the winner of Britain's Got Talent? I think he might have been. This is the film about his life essentially, and him winning Britain's Got Talent. And that's me there. Hopefully you can see the clicker pointing to me. A bit tenuous, but that's, I thought, well, it's a film with James Corden, it's quite cool. So that's me there in the background playing a miner in the steel mine, I think it was meant to be. And there's Mr. James Corden. All right, moving on. This is for a TV ident. This was for a Welsh rugby, I think it was Six Nations match, and they wanted people to film themselves singing the Welsh song Calon Lan, and then they created this sort of montage piece where all these different people were singing the song together, and there's me up in the corner lending my words to the song Calon Lan. You won't have seen this obviously if you don't live in Wales, because it was only shown as a very brief TV ident in Wales, so you won't have seen it anywhere else. But if you live in Wales, you may have seen me at some point in the distant past. Moving on, we're back to Casualty again. Here I am getting in a wheelchair. I tend to be in a wheelchair quite a bit in Casualty, and that's me being wheeled out of the lift. I'm no longer a chef. I'm some other injured person now. Tend to be in Casualty quite a lot, if I'm totally honest. I've done, I would probably say, well over 20, 25 episodes of Casualty, so most of the time, bet you don't even see me, lucky if you see me as a blur on the screen, but a few times I can be seen semi-clearly, and this is me coming out of the lift in Casualty. Scrolling on, this is an episode a screenshot from an episode of the TV series Doctors, which is on BBC. It's a long-running sort of daily soap, I guess. It's on in the daytime around about 1-2 o'clock in the afternoon. We used to watch it years ago. I haven't seen it for years now, but this is the only episode of Doctors I ever did, and there's me in a grey jumper this time instead, not the grey hoodie, a grey jumper this time with a shirt on underneath. But this is me in the corner here having a lovely meal, while the main actor, Heston, I think is the character, is looking very pensive and concerned, sitting at the bar. Scrolling on, this is actually another Welsh language TV advert that I did. This was for a TV show called Club, which was, I think, basically it's a TV show about, or a TV series about Welsh rugby, and it was really, really fun one to do. This girl who's sort of barging me out the way is shopping in a market, and she suddenly morphs into wearing a Welsh rugby shirt and rugby tackles people out of the way to get from one end of the market to the other. And that's me there being rugby tackled out of the way by this lovely young lady. So that was quite cool. Moving on. This is a scene from the ITV series The Lost Honour of Christopher Jeffries, about the murder of the lady whose name I can't remember, which is terrible, Joanne something I think her name was, and she was murdered in Bristol a few years ago, and her landlord Christopher Jeffries was originally blamed for the murder, and turned out he didn't do it, it wasn't him. And this is a scene in a press conference, and there I am just here at the back, peeking over with my camera, taking photographs in the press conference, as I say, for this TV series The Lost Honour of Christopher Jeffries. Moving on, this is for a Welsh language drama called Gwaith Cartref. Again, you probably won't have seen this unless you live in Wales. Gwaith Cartref essentially literally means homework. And it's set in a school, not surprisingly, and this is me as a construction worker in a dangerous area, and obviously that's me with the hat on and the high-vis jacket, so that was cool. Welsh drama stuff is obviously huge in Wales. It's big lifeblood if anyone is an essay, so yeah, lots of stuff like this, but a few more of these types of things coming up through the video. Here I am back on another episode of Stella. That's me, obviously. I've changed my coat here. I've gone for the sort of mustard-coloured coat rather than the green one here. And this is an episode from series, I think possibly series 5, maybe, when Auntie Brenda runs for mayor. The interesting story about this one. I actually did this scene a couple of times walking past in front of the main characters, and they actually moved me because they said I was kind of taking away too much from the actual scene itself by walking in front of these people. So they actually replaced me with an actress who walked past instead. But clearly, I obviously had something that she didn't, because when the actual scene came out on TV, they'd put the scene with me back in and cut her out. So obviously, you know, what can I say? I clearly had a bit of charisma that this young lady didn't have. They replaced me with. But yeah, that was really cool. That's another nice one off Stella. Moving on, we're back on Casualty again. I'm on the bed here. I can't remember what the storyline was. I think I'd hurt my arm or something. I'm not sure. It looks like I might have my arm in a bandage or something like that. But there I am, sort of just chilling on the bed. Anytime you can do essay work where you're literally sitting down or lying down is obviously the best sort of role to get. This was very, very brief, but a brief glimpse of me again in Casualty. Moving on, this one's sort of slightly out of the ordinary. This is actually an advert for the Welsh Fire Service, which is which went into cinemas all across Wales. So if you went to cinema and watched a film, this advert was in there, and it's basically about not setting grass fires during the very hot summers that we had over the last couple of years. And the storyline is that this lady in the green blanket and myself, we're the parents of this young boy who sets a grass fire in the mountains. The fire service is called to put the fire out, and while they're up there putting the grass fire out, our house actually catches fire, and our son comes back to find us outside the house with all our house burning, and a fireman eventually comes out and brings out our pet dog who's been killed in the fire. It's really sad, but if they'd got there sooner, they might have been able to rescue him, but of course they couldn't because they were up in the mountains trying to put the fire out that my son had started. So yeah, that was quite a cool one. Very nice, easy day, fairly well paid, and yeah, enjoyed that, and that was quite a nice one. Right, moving on. This is another Welsh language program. This is Poblacion, which is probably, well, it's one of the biggest Welsh language programs. It's I'm sure most people have probably heard of it, even if you don't live in Wales. It's basically the longest running British soap opera. I think it started in the mid to late 60s, and it's still running every day now, Monday to Friday. And this is one of my first appearances in Poblacion, which is really cool. I just love the screenshot. It's brilliant. He should be in jail eating porridge, not here drinking beer. He's not, the chap with the bald head's not actually talking to me. I'm just there having a pint and reading a menu. He's actually talking to someone who's off camera here. But that was a really cool one, and I couldn't believe how nicely placed I was for this particular scene, which is awesome. So I love doing Poblacion. I've done it several times now, and it's a brilliant show to do. Just so much fun. Moving on, another Casualty. This is, I think the character was called Zoe. I want to say Dr. Zoe, or Zoe Hannah, maybe, or Zoe Hannah, I'm not sure. And this was her leaving episode where she flies off to America, I think. So this is our makeshift airport, and there's me stood at the back as basically some dude loitering in the airport as she looks very sad and leaves Holby to fly off to pastures new. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so this is, I'd say this is probably one of the best things I did, actually, one of the things I enjoyed doing the most. This is from a TV series which nobody will have seen. It's from a TV series called Londongrad. It was filmed for Russian television, so it's never been released over here in the UK. But apparently it's one of the biggest shows in recent years in Russia. It's huge, and they love it. And this is a promo photograph actually for it, and you can see me down here in the corner as a prison guard. This is the main character from the series who's currently in prison. If I scroll on a little bit, here I am as a prison guard. I'm standing here listening in as this chap does a big monologue to camera. So I'm sort of stood here waiting, and he was talking entirely in Russian, and I had to come in with a line at a particular point, which is not easy when you don't speak Russian. But I managed it, and here I am delivering my line to the main character, who's called Kulikov. Funny story here. I delivered my line, which was something like, "Kulikov, you've got a visitor." I think that was about it. But in Russia, they don't like subtitles, so nothing in Russia is subtitled, so they dub over everything. So every person who spoke English in this series was dubbed over. So I'm dubbed over on the DVD release, which I have got. You don't hear my voice, you hear a dubbed over voice. But interesting fact, they only had one person who dubbed every single voice in this series, and she's a female. So when I deliver my line, a female Russian voice comes out and says the line instead, which is really bizarre. But there we go. So I deliver my line. There's then a long tracking shot where we walk out of the prison exercise yard. Here I am. I follow Kulikov out, follow the actor out, blah, blah, blah. He carries on talking, doing his monologue. And then we get to the prison gates, and I interact with him again, which is really cool. I mean, proper sort of walk-on interaction stuff here. I interact with the guy, tap him on the shoulder, walk him through the prison gates. And there's a few other scenes that I did for this where I'm in a little sort of prison fight, and then I sort of grab a guy by his arm and twist his arm behind his back and lead him out of this interview room later on. So it was a really, really brilliant thing to work on. Loads and loads of fun. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And as I say, it was called London Grad. Moving on, it's just another casualty episode, really. That's me sat on the chair, trying to just sort of blend into the background a little bit while the doctors come past and have a conversation. So that's me doing my blending into the background essay stuff, which I think I'm doing rather well. Moving on, this is if London Grad was one of my favourite things I did, this is definitely up there in my top maybe 2 or 3 things that I've done so far. This is me. This is a publicity shot actually from a TV series called Voice of a Serial Killer, and I was in one episode. The premise of it is that they have recordings of real serial killer interviews, and they dub the serial killer interviews over the actors, and I played the serial killer Colin Ireland. So that's me as the serial killer Colin Ireland. He murdered during the 90s. He was known as the Gay Slayer, and he murdered gay men who he picked up in Soho. Basically, he wanted to become a serial killer, so he went out and deliberately targeted and murdered people. So I played this character. So this is me here. This is another promo shot of me from the episode in a gay pub in. Well, obviously this is Cardiff. I filmed it in, but a pub in Soho. So this is another shot, publicity shot of me as Colin Ireland. Actually got a credit on this one, which is cool. So you can see there Colin Ireland, and there I am. So you can see I actually got a credit for that, which is pretty awesome. And not only that, I actually appeared on a number of newspaper websites, including the Daily Fail that you can see here I was in, and they used this publicity picture. After initial denying any involvement, Ireland confessed to his crimes and described them in clinical detail to police officers. Pictured an actor in a reenactment. I'm glad they put it on there and people didn't actually think I was the serial killer Colin Ireland. Otherwise that could be a bit embarrassing. But yeah, that was brilliant. Absolutely loved it. It was really hard work. Did several days on this, but the episode looks amazing, if I do say so myself. The series Voice of a Serial Killer, I think, is still on CBS Reality, so it's worth keeping an eye out. You might see it on there at some point. Next one then, if of those two that I've just mentioned were in my top 3, this is another one, and this is again the TV series Trolleyed, and again I had a line of dialogue, and actually you heard me in this one. I've actually put the video clip of this in one of my other videos on here, but I bring in a sort of a cage of doves that I deliver to the 2 main actresses, and this is me delivering my line here, and that's me interacting with the 2 main actresses from Trolleyed. I think the line is something like "Delivery for Neville's #1 gal," I think is the line that I deliver. But that was brilliant. So yeah, you know, I love it if I get the odd line. It's very rare as an essay you do, but when you do, you grab it, and because you get paid extra money, obviously. So that was really cool fun to do that one. Moving on now, we're nearly at the end. This is from a film that I did 2 years ago, I think, which is called The Lost Viking. This is actually one of the only scenes in a film that actually stayed in the film. So I'm still, surprisingly, it's actually in the film. And I'm the character here. And I'm going into a fighting pit to fight the other main character, which is this lady here. Kezia Burrows is the actress. And yeah, I'm about to walk into this fighting pit and fight her. You don't actually see a fight between us. It's just an implied one, but I'm in this scene in the film The Lost Viking, which is really cool. Nearly at the end now. This is me back in Pobla Cum again. Very nice one here. Sat on the bench drinking a pint. Surprise, surprise, is where I tend to be most of the time, is sat in a pub drinking a pint. But this is a great day, and I say I love doing Pobla Cum. It's a brilliant show to be on, and if you catch it right, you're either going to be like this lady here with your back to camera sat in a corner, or literally front and centre, middle of the screen, looking like you're one of the main characters when you're not. So that's cool. And the very last and most up-to-date thing that I've done is this episode of Casualty. You can see how up-to-date it is if you watch Casualty, because these are fairly new characters in it. And here I am with my on-screen wife, Sarah, for this particular episode, and we're being told some bad news, I think, by this doctor over here. So that's me. Surprise, surprise, the grey hoodie's back. Hooray, we haven't seen that for a while, so I decided to break out the grey hoodie just for old time's sake for this episode. And that's it. Hopefully that's a really interesting, or at least, hopefully it was at least a run-through of the stuff I've done over the years. If you've got any questions about being an SA, what it's like, what sort of stuff I've done, anything you want to know, please leave a comment or a message. I'm quite happy to get those, and I'd love to reply and answer any questions you might have. Obviously, my normal videos will be back out from next month, where I'll do my next celebrity signings autograph update. But for now, hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you again very, very soon. Thank you very much for watching. All the best. Take care. Bye bye.